AskReddit by majesty. What's the craziest thing you've seen someone do on a work computer? When a company I worked for first got onto the net in the 90s, everyone was pretty green on how it worked and how slow it was. Apparently, one day the marketing manager tried to print a bunch of hardcore porno pics from a site and sent them to our shared printer. After waiting and rechecking for some time, he thought the images wouldn't print. However, they finally come over the printer just in time for the director to pick them up when he went to retrieve his own business documents. Holy crap, that just reminded me of my first porn photo I ever saw on the internet. It was from the old Usenet sites and it was a fake of Sandra Bullock topless pic. Anyway, it took about 40 minutes, if not a full hour, to load. My butt's parents came home about halfway through, so we had to play it cool. I got to see the final result for all of 30 seconds before we had to close it and delete stuff. Yet I still remember that photo quite vividly. Many years ago I worked for a company that sold network servers, back when they were just tower PCs. A customer had some kind of problem with theirs, so they shipped it back to us. They were careful to protect it during shipping. Did they wrap the server in plastic before putting in the box? No. Did they fill the box with styrofoam peanuts? No. They stuck the server in a box and filled the box with expanding urethane foam. The poor guys on the receiving floor spent the better part of a day shipping that damn thing out of the box, only to find out that it hadn't been wrapped, and expanding foam had gotten into the case. I'm not sure they were able to salvage anything from it. See, your problem is that this thing is filled with foam. Fired a guy for well-documented performance-related issues. While combing through his computer to prep it for the next person, I found not only extensive adult content, pics, videos, himself, etc., but a lot of X-rated chats with clients. A month or so later he filed a claim for wrongful termination, which was totally bogus, but I think he wanted a quick settlement. I showed up to the hearing with 2 boxes full of blank reams of paper with a sign on the box that said Bob's browser and chat history. His eye got huge upon seeing that and dropped the claim 15 years later. I can't get those naked selfies out of my head. Thanks Bob. LMAO. Mining crypto on old work computers years back was a classic department hobby. No one has any fucking idea what's going on in there, and no one will notice that spike in power and HVAC usage. Hey boss, we need a bigger server. Give us money. And it gets rubber stamped. In the early 2000s I worked at a uni as a sysadmin. I repurposed one of our old servers as a Counter-Strike server. It would come online at 5 PM and shut down at 5 AM. Director was cool with it as long as it didn't interfere with ops. Security wasn't as a big concern back then. It was pretty popular though. Eventually hit the top 10 in campus bandwidth usage and got flagged during a holiday break when no one was on campus. Dean was cool about it. Ran it for a few more years and ECOM did when I left. During an internship, walked in on my boss playing World of Warcraft on his work computer. I slacked off a lot after that. If this happened at a certain engineering firm in Toronto, I was that boss. My former boss was caught multiple times watching porn at work, and after the 5th or 6th incident they fired him. I helped clean out his office, and there were printouts of porn pics stuffed everywhere in his file cabinet, and the seat of his computer chair and other fabric surfaces, like his mouse pad and the wrist pad thingy in front of his keyboard, were suspiciously crusty. The crazy thing is, that office had windows that anybody in the office could see through and no blinds. I guess he just waited until everybody else had gone home for the day. Porn at work, huh? That's bold. I get nervous about getting caught when watching that at home. And I live alone. They ran a command to save 10k in disk, causing a 5-day outage with downtime measured in millions per hour. I brought down our email servers for 24 hours about 15 years ago. May have been 48. I've blocked it out. We had a manager who got a brand new, top of the line laptop given to him every 6 months. The reason being is he destroyed them. I don't know if he was just clumsy or had a bad temper, but it'd be pristine when we handed it to him. Then a few weeks later he'd show up and the thing would be falling apart. Keys missing, cracked cases, busted screens, you name it. He was a one-man laptop wrecking ball. On average they lasted 6 months before becoming so busted up they just failed. I did end up fixing a couple of them up as best I could and giving them to other employees, but most went to recycling or the parts bin. Since he was director level, the company just bought him a new one every time. The president of the first company I worked for was like this. I don't think it was ever intentional, she was just clumsy and rough with her laptop. It got to the point where we'd have a spare HP Elitabook imaged and ready to go in the storeroom whenever she needed it. My former boss had a server packed with pirated movies, games, porn and whatever. He shared the address with everyone, and everybody knew about it. People just enjoyed a safe and easy place to get their wares. I was there for 2 years, and the server was there the whole time being updated daily. That's actually kind of awesome and really hilarious. It's not as extreme as some of the things here, but in 2011 I worked for a place they banned Spotify because it slowed down the network. Some people figured out that Netflix was not restricted. People would listen to movies all day instead of listening to Spotify. Never had a problem with the network speed. I was doing remote support for a sales team in the 1990s. One of the salesmen called and told me that his computer that he used for presentations was catching on fire. This was prior to laptops being widespread. It was a large box with a CRT monitor built into one side and a detachable keyboard. We called them lunchbox computers. The crazy part is that, after he unplugged it and the fire went out, he plugged it back in to see if it would still catch on fire. It would, and did. I can imagine his reaction to his brilliant scientific method of experimentation being, well, would you look at that? Go to my computer and click copy. Then go to her computer and wonder why it couldn't paste. I was baffled. I once asked my boss for a link to one of the government websites we use and she asked if I wanted it for Edge or Chrome. Icepeer, a former employee here, hosted a porn website on a server right there on the main server rack, without permission, OBV. I work for an ISP as well, and while I'm somewhat on the younger side, the stories the older guys would tell you, it was the Wild West before ADSL became the norm, and they were hosting their own stuff and running Counter-Strike servers straight in the heart of the country's sole ISP. Sitting in a meeting and one of the junior guys was driving the computer, with an action list in Excel. At one point the GM wanted to pull up a document that he had saved on his personal drive on the server. The junior guy logs off and puts in the boss's first name last name into the login screen, and the boss reaches out to take the keyboard to put in his password. Rather than handing it over, the junior guy quickly types password 123, its default, and hits enter. Sure enough, it worked. Boss hadn't changed his password in about 2 years. There was a bit of a scowl and don't do that again, but the boss couldn't be too mad given he himself had obviously broken a major rule in its security. Worked for a family-owned company, was best friends with oldest son, my boss. One day his mother called from head office, wanting to know if I knew his password. He was out of the country. I gave her the names of 3 of his RPG characters, said it would be one of those. Totally was. I think there was a site called Raid My Camel Toe, and I used to work with a co-worker that would be on that daily. Rating, or being rated? I had to fire an employee for very good cause. The guy was a sleazebag. After he left, the HR director came in and said, "Let's look at his browser history." His most visited site was bigblackpussy.com. I thought it might have been a cat fancier website, but no, it was not. It's never a cat fancier website, let's be honest. Selling illegally imported turtles as a side business from a government computer. One day, the police showed up. seized his computer, and escorted him out of the building. We thought it was kiddie porn, but it turns out he was smuggling exotic turtles to sell as pets and using his work computer. Just having a side gig on your work computer is enough to get you fired, let alone an illegal business. It never occurred to me before that illegal turtle import is a business, but I guess everybody has their niche. How do you even get into turtle importing? Say nothing of the turtle import black market. Saw this one guy do work on his computer at work, was crazy. That's disgusting. NSFW. Entire department moved to a new part of the building and so computers got shifted around to new users. Found out I was on my boss's station when I found his taxes and the job offer with our current employer that included pay and company stock. While working for the GVT doing submarine maintenance, a woman at the tool crib downloaded a bunch of porn pics onto the computer. She had a meeting with security where they printed out every picture with the date and time and asked her one by one if she downloaded them. She was pissed that she wasn't allowed to keep the pictures. Her nickname was Leather Tits. Calculating BMI with a calculator, and typing the answer in Excel, which had the list of all people's weight and height. Back in the days when film was the normal way of taking pictures, a guy brought a bunch of snapshots into the office to scan. Snapshots of his pornographic escapades with two bigger ladies. All three of them had foot fetishes, so there was the foot version of fisting. There was a tiny PP. There was a lot. He scanned them on a workgroup scanner, transferred them to his desktop via a file server, and then from there to floppies or CD. But then he left the scans on the file server, where I found them, and had to report them to HR. An old supervisor of mine screenshotted a woman doing squats in the gym, then proceeded to send via email. Unfortunately, he sent it to the manager of the gym who was actually on holiday, and thus this email was forwarded over to the regional manager. He wasn't with us very long after that. Please see attached. Member complained there were too many sexy women in the gym. Download and use Tor. Not sure how they circumvented our firewall policies and download install restrictions. Portable apps. I was working in the long distance telephone reseller in the 90s. There was a PC in one of the offices that a coworker decided to format and use in his office. It turns out the PC had $250,000 worth of billing erased by the format. I wondered why Montgomery wards tanked.